welcome everyone to the Teen Debaters third session in the MUNing 101 series. I'm Ansh and we are so excited to have you all here today. Please don't hesitate to drop your questions in the chat during the session and we'll definitely get back to you. The Teen Debater is an organization dedicated to revolutionizing debate education, access and activity for schools and students across India. We want debate to be a powerful tool for social mobility and change and make it accessible for free. We aim to enhance your critical thinking, expand your worldview, but also go beyond debate and build a community. Your speakers for this session will be Siri Umadi from Management Committee and Avira Bhatt from the Organizing Committee, two exceptional MUNers from the Teen Debater Committee.
Yeah, thanks so much for the introduction. Hi, everybody. We're a tight group today, so I really hope that everyone can answer questions. We'll be really trying to engage with you guys so we can get like meaningful responses. And I'm just going to hand it over to Siri now. Siri is a really experienced debater. I think you guys have already met and talked to her before. So, yeah, let's just get into the session. We're a smaller group, so I would really appreciate your participation. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in chat and I'll try my best to come with a good response. Yeah, Siri, please go ahead.
Yeah. So let's just get started. The first thing we're going to be discussing today. Next slide, please. No, you're at the end. Let's go back to the beginning. So the first thing we're going to be discussing today is actually voice modulation. Right. So things to keep in mind when speaking in committee. The first thing that comes first is going to be voice modulation and body language, right? You need to know where to increase your pitch, where to decrease your pitch, your tone, and when to use what voice. This variation in pace and volume will help you basically emphasize on key points and express your emotions, right? And mainly capture the attention of the committee. If it's monotonous, you also won't be listening to another delegate's speech. It's a very strategic aspect and technique which everybody needs to use in their speeches, debate or not debate. I'll give you an example, like lowering your voice for seriousness, raising it to convey urgency. You can slow it down for critical points, etc., to give the moments of reflection in the middle, right, for the delegates. And this is actually very important when you're negotiating with other delegates. To give you guys an example, I'll just give you an example from one of my speeches. This was in the World Health Organization. Not only does this violate the right to abortion under healthcare, but it violates the very essence of the World Health Organization's consensus on the definition of health. Yet, when the policies regarding abortion simply on the grounds of health are proposed, the description is simply one that the WHO states it is not. That is how you have to emphasize on certain words, and that is how you have to make sure that certain points are highlighted more. Moving on, let's begin with our introduction. So, first impression is the best impression. We all know that. So we want a very strong opening, right? So let's say we want to root ourselves into the thoughts of someone who has a hold, as someone who has a hold on what they're talking about in committee, right? You need to state your position. You need to provide an overview of what you want to talk about in the committee that day. And I would also recommend to include quotes, facts, or thought-provoking questions, right? A good tip in your MUNs which you can use is that use your country's motto or a popular saying in your country, right? So if I'm the delegate of Canada, I can use the Amari Uski Admari. So things like that can also be included in speeches, which will really drag the delegates listening to you in, right? Moving on, background and context, if I remember right. Next slide, please. Yeah. Background and context. If you want to show a solid understanding of the issue at hand, you need to show the history and the context as well. This includes historical background, relevant facts and figures, current events that are controversial to it, etc., etc. It will be easier to identify previous solutions that could have worked with modifications or anticipate and address them in committee, right? the challenges that were there with the previous solutions. Highlighting all of those will show that you know what you're talking about, because that will bring you credibility, right? Credibility is really important in MUNs to prove yourself, and knowing the context can really build it up. When you try to negotiate with delegates as well, this credibility will let you add very valuable inputs into your conversations and your DRs, etc. Moving on, next slide. We have our main arguments. So, as I said, for your introduction and your introductory speeches, such as GSLs, you set the stage basically for the main arguments. And once your research is done, you should be able to prioritize your arguments, their importance and their relevance according to the committee's discussions. Those will be your main arguments. You need to present your arguments clearly and organize them logically and in a structured manner according to the moderated caucuses, right? So you can maintain bullet points or numbered lists of just your main arguments so that you have that handy to pick up during your GSLs or mod talks or unmods to talk about them, right? Your main arguments should definitely and always align with your country's interests, and it's always better to draw support with official statements, treaties, etc. That those can be from the past as well, from your government, etc., etc. Again, building credibility, therefore reputation, and therefore influence. Moving on, appeals to emotions and values. Now, in a committee meeting, this actually takes a lot of prominence in the Human Rights Council, because this is basically to emphasize on the human impact of the issue, right? That is what you want to highlight by appealing to a person's emotions and their values. It's all about highlighting the consequences of the issue in discussion. You can do this by sharing anecdotes, testimonies. Suppose we're talking about the Israel-Palestine conflict. We can pull up figures of the journalists that are struggling over there to actually, send the situations pictures back to us to make us see the trauma that everyone's going through, to make us see the damage being done to a beautiful place. So, like this, if you personalize the issue, you can evoke empathy towards a different side of the issue you want to highlight, right? But please don't go talking about bad healthcare in a mod talk about, let's say, bad education, because basically, when you're appealing to emotions and values, you want to focus on evidence-based reasoning, and you want to focus on rational reasoning. Okay. Even though this focuses on moral values or ethical values, you want to make sure there's evidence behind it, as I said about the Palestine and Israel conflict right now. You can include this technique in your GSLs as well to slowly shed light on, like, focusing towards, again, the citizens who are losing lives due to the lack of healthcare somewhere, which should also be a priority to the committee rather than just education, things like that. Moving on, call to action. So you need to conclude your speeches with a very compelling call to action, okay? You can stress on the importance of collective action, that no single country can address the issue alone. These kind of things make up your call to action, right? By reinforcing your stance, you can basically summarize your main arguments as well to show that you support this and to show coherence in your call to action, actually. Also, you can include specific proposals or initiatives that your country supports, or potential solutions that you have already taken up, or solutions that you think the committee should be taking up. And these can actually be action plans, policy recommendations, etc., etc. Okay. But make sure that these policies and proposals are realistic and relevant to your committee. The more you do MUNs and the more you come to our sessions at the Teen Debater, you'll understand more about how to make these relevant to your committee and how to how to come up with potential solutions and proposals as well. So also another great thing about call to action is inviting other delegates to join forces, essentially, collaborate with you. And your aim should be to highlight their benefit in working together towards the goal of the committee. I think we can move on to the next slide. Delivery techniques. So confidence is key, right? Good posture and good eye contact with the audience is very important. You need to project yourself in a committee and show your assertiveness. Something discussed in the previous session as well by a fellow debater, when you're delivering a speech in a committee, it'll be better for you if you're intimidated by looking into the delegates' eyes. You can look at their foreheads actually. This was a great tip given in the last discussion we had. And yeah, for a lot of you, this may help if you are facing stage fright, etc., etc. Gestures are very important, body language especially, right? Because keep in mind, everyone, debate, not only should your voice emphasize on your main arguments, but also your body, because communication is not limited to just your verbal ability, right? So pay good attention to your hands while making a speech or speaking to delegates. Hands in your pockets or on your phones need to be avoided. A lot of delegates hold papers of their speech in one hand while making gestures with the other. Another thing I really recommend. The other things you can try, which you probably see me, Avira, or any other immune friend you know when talking, doing is actually like the fingertip touch, right? So suppose you can tap out the rhythm to specific points or words you're saying. You can squint your eyes at certain words. You can nod your head, etc., etc. You can use visual aids or props, but you need to make sure they don't overpower your speech, right? And then during unmods as well, a lot crossing your arms or legs will convey more of a defensive outlook, right? They're going to think that you're more closed off. Rather than that, it's very important that you have the same seriousness and stance about the issue, but you do let a little bit of your personality flow into the unmods, which we will be speaking about later. So mostly about delivering techniques, I can conclude by saying maintain that seriousness, maintain that assertiveness, and make sure that you're confident. Even there's another good point given in by a fellow delegator in here in the teen debater was that no one other than you knows what your speech was about. I think it was Avira who pointed this out, right? No one other than you knows what your speech is about. So why are you scared? It's fine. So yeah, that's a great thing as well. Moving on to the next point. Yeah, thank you. Active listening is actually a very important thing in an MUN. This makes up 90% of your MUN, according to me. This will help you understand others' perspectives, their stances, and also build conversation points for unmods, right? If you found something peculiar or something that really impressed you in someone's speech, you can raise that up in an unmod. And actively listening will also help you ask a person POIs or raise POs as well. You need to focus on the delegate's speech. And as we spoke already, do not interrupt them. I think in the first session, we talked about the rules of procedure. You are not allowed to interrupt a delegate speech unless it's that you cannot hear them. By just listening to the first few speeches in a committee, one second. Yeah. By just listening to the first few speeches of a delegate in a committee, you can understand, you can analyze the delegate. You can analyze who's going to be active, who's going to be involved, who's going to be a power delegate, and how much research you need to conduct on a certain country, if you need to be defensive against them, if their policies align with you. Listening to others' arguments and listening to what they're proposing, listening to their questions without dismissing any of the delegates' views is going to help you a lot in an MUN, right? And for all of this, you can maintain a separate document on your device or a separate notepad for taking down the minutes of meetings. This can actually help a lot when you need to go through the notepad. Suppose you're in a committee of around 30, 40 delegates. Maintaining such a thing will help you in understanding who is who and how to navigate each delegate. Next up, we have building rapport. So basically, establishing positive relationships with delegates is going to give you such a smooth negotiation process, right? And it's going to give you a very much of a better approachability in committee. If you show respect, show openness, and be willing to listen to others and their ideas instead of just assert dominance in a conversation, it's going to give you a lot of connections, like right at the start of the committee sessions. And a lot of the delegates actually appreciate if you even give a remark about their speech in the unmods. And by doing that, not only will you build a connection fast, but it can also show empathy, and they'll be encouraged to listen to your speech as well. But you need to be the one initiating conversations. You need to take an interest in the delegate and not only their country, but also them as a person, right? Go up to someone, compliment their earrings, and tell them, I'm the delegate of Canada. This is my third MUN. How many MUNs have you done? And that is how you initiate a conversation. Also, to establish rapport and connection with someone, you need to find out the common ground, such as shared policy goals or mutual concerns in the committee's issue at hand, or something you both think is not being discussed enough in the committee. There are so many points you guys can talk about in an unmod. You can share your ideas, offer guidance with procedural rules. You can give feedback on DRs. And that is why you need to basically be very approachable in a committee session, unmod or mod. Okay? Even with power delegates, you need to know how to properly deal with the power delegate. You cannot be mean or rude to any delegate and get caught up in your emotions, because that is going to send a message to your block, to your chair, and to the whole committee that you are uncontrollable and that you are controlling as well. But yeah, you should not be a pushover at the same time, right? You should not try to people please everyone. And most importantly, if you believe in something, stand by it. May it be a clause in a DR which you are against or which you are for, or even something such as your stance which is being questioned by your DR, you need to stand for it, even though the connection you build with a certain delegate is there or not there. That connection shouldn't be affected by simply your stance. That is diplomacy, and that is what an MUN is about, right? Moving on. Next point. Finding common ground. So before the conference begins, engage in a lot of pre-conference communication with other delegates, because you can use that opportunity to understand their priorities, right? You can identify the areas of like overlap or agreement, or the values you share as a country maybe. And this can include like shared concerns about specific aspects of the issue, such as if you're in HRC, the the healthcare facilities that are lacking in the area, which is again not being discussed in committee, or something else which you did not even think of yourself, right? You can propose joint initiatives or even statements when you have been building relationships like that. And being pragmatic and flexible in your approach to a delegate or even negotiations, and recognizing that compromise is going to be very necessary as well. And to conclude, I would say during an MUN, finding common ground is not only going to help you connect with other delegates, but also be a prominent delegate. If there's 50 people in your committee and you're not able to find common ground and you're not able to agree and listen to any of the delegates there, that is, MUNs are just not for you at that point. But finding common ground, finding common goals, and having those conversations and wishing that unmods could go for a longer time, that is the fun of an MUN. Because MUNs may look like a game and it may seem like they have a lot of calculative aspects, but it's also an experience, right? Where you have to stay true to yourself. And with that, I will be passing it on to Avira. Thank you. Avira, can you?
Yeah, all right. Thank you so much, Siri, for saying all of that. Just to add a little bit on common ground, it could also be like common goals you have. Like, for example, I'm Europe, I'm a European country, and I'm really into EVs, right? Because you can see right now Europe has been doing a lot of work to promote EVs, to, talk about EVs a lot more. And then I see China. And although me and China have a lot of hostility right now with, something, certain geopolitical things in Russia and whatever, I can still find a common ground that China also is exporting a lot of EVs, right? With BYD and everything else, they're also really EV focused. Hence, if I'm in a sustainability council, I can partner with China on that policy, or I can get them as a sponsor, showing that I have that policy. Because we have that common ground. See, if you don't have any common ground with any delegate ever, then you're not going to be able to create a rich new DR. Also, if you only have common ground with countries that are basically the same as you, like for example, if I'm US and I'm getting only majorly support from Canada, and we're neighbors and we have like sort of the same history, or if I'm Europe and I'm only getting help from European countries, although there are a lot of blocks like Asian blocks or like small island blocks and all of that, what really makes it interesting and diverse DR is that we have countries from all over the world who are agreeing on the same issues as you do. And that's, what's really beautiful about having common ground. So before I continue, I would just like to do a little check-in on everybody. So with all of this information in mind, I just want to let you guys know that in an MUN, you're gonna you'd be like, okay, I understand, like I should be a listener, but then I also should give good speeches and what is that. How do I manage all of this on my plate? Because there's so many things I need to pay attention during an MUN. And the thing is, you don't. A lot of times you want to really notice someone's really good speech, and you want to take notes because you want to bring that at your unmount, but then you also don't want to notice the speech because you have to write a chit and you need to do all of that. I think a good rule of thumb is that when all of this is, hi Rishika, I'll just take questions during the end of the session, but thank you so much for showing interest. Just give me a moment. So when you have all of this stuff going on, the best rule of thumb is I should never be vacant. Like you should never be like bored during an MUN. You should always have something to do. And that's what I really manage in my MUNs, is that always, okay, right now I'm going to talk to this delegate, or right now I'm going to actively listen, or right now I'm going to do this, right now I'm going to work on my DR. And that's how I really manage stuff with my MUNs, where I prioritized, obviously, but I should never have a moment where I'm just sitting silently, not doing anything. So that should always be on the forefront of your mind when you're doing an MUN. Um, so can we go to the next slide then? Yeah, okay. So now we talked about power delegates. Just a quick check-in. Do you guys know what a power delegate is? And if you do, could someone please tell me what a power delegate is? And characteristics of one? Um, anyone? Um, or I'll just call out your name. Pujna, could you tell me if you know, or what do you think like a power delegate is? Wait, yeah.
I have no idea.
That's all right. Okay. But what do you think of when you like think of the word? That's just what I want. Is could someone else answer? Rishika, could you answer what do you think when you think of like a power delegate? What does that mean to you? Anyone, if you could put it in chat as well. See, guys, we're only like around 10 people, so I would really appreciate it if you could so I could really make this some useful session for you. And again, just reminding everyone to turn on your cameras, because if you want a certificate, if you want formal recognition from not just us but high school moms and other people who partner with us, then we'll need your cameras on. um Shaurya, do you have an answer that you could give? What do you think like a power delegate is?
Mama.
All right, that's fine. If no one knows what power delegate is, that's all right. It's a very commonly used term in MUNs, where basically a power delegate is someone who really tries to control the room. When you're in a group project and you have that one person who's being really bossy and trying to kind of make the whole project, no, you do this and you do this. No, we can't do that. We can't do that. That's what a power delegate is, where in your group project, they're trying to control everything. They're trying to get the most credit. They're trying to act like they're better than you and they're the leader. And you don't want to be a power delegate. You want to be a good delegate, and that's what the real difference is. But a lot of times what you have to be kind of sly in MUNs as well, and you have to target delegates at times. So what does this mean? Targeting delegate means, okay, firstly, this is not like you victimize them or you don't give them an opportunity to speak or you bully them. The point of targeting delegates is that you get delegates aren't really experienced or don't really know what's going on, and you get them on your side. For example, I'll give you a really good example. I was in ECOFIN, which is Economic Financial Council, and I was writing my DR, and then I saw that United States was kind of sitting there and she wasn't really doing anything, which is what no, you're not supposed to do. So I took the opportunity. I went up to her. I asked, what's going on, what type of team you're in, and then she was like, I'm not really in any team. This is my first time doing an MUN. Okay, so now I know she has no idea what's going on. Now what I'll target her is, oh, then you should totally join, my DR. We have a space vacant for you. You should really come and join us. You're the United States. You have so many resources to give, you should really come with us. And that's how I targeted her. I looked at, what how she's making like inconsistencies, or how she's not being vacant enough, and I targeted her and I got her on my side. Further way you can use people against it, like for example, if I'm how countries have like allies and enemies. For example, I'm a country and my ally is Afghanistan, and I don't want Afghanistan to touch my DR. I don't want them there. I really just think that it'll really shatter my country's international policies. So what I'm going to do is that when Afghanistan makes a speech next time, I'm going to ask a POI that's going to be really, really good. I'm going to make a rebuttal that's really, really good to anything that Afghanistan asks. Or I'm going to tell other people, like, oh, Afghanistan mentioned this, but this is like this statistic isn't even true or whatever. Obviously, you're not attacking them as a person. You're not going to call them ugly or something. but you're going to attack, what they say and why they say it. Right to reply is a really good way to do this. And now everyone in your DR and everyone in the committee is kind of starting to mistrust Afghanistan because you've been pointing out all of these inconsistencies in the arguments. So that's what I really like to do with targeting delegates. Either you can target them to get them on your side. Notice a weak delegate. Notice a delegate who's not really doing anything. Notice a delegate who is lost, who could, use support. Give them that support and get them on your side. And if there's a delegate you don't want there for international policy reasons, or you think they're, not going to ride the DR well or whatever, but you really can't say that upfront because, there are other countries there, you can obviously target them in more implicit other ways and build mistrust and all that. Find weaknesses in them and exploit that, and then let everyone know that this delegate really doesn't know what they're doing. Um, yeah, we need to do that. MUN, it's constant battle going on. If you could go to the next slide. Um, go to the next slide. Yeah, okay. Compromise and okay. Can we go back to the previous? Yeah, compromise and flexibility. All right, so compromise and flexibility. So a lot of times, this isn't just any relationship, even I think in friendships, a lot of times you have an argument with your friend and you're like, okay, you know what, we're just going to agree to disagree. Or you know what, fine, I'll give it to you. You won the argument. We're going to do this thing that even if I don't like, but you're a close friend of mine, so we're going to compromise and we're going to do this thing. Like a lot of times, my friends are like, we should hang out this, we could hang out that. I'm a bit of an introvert. I don't really like to hang out that much, but I know that my friends like hanging out and I know that they like to go outside and talk. So I make that compromise and I do go outside with them and I have fun with them. Because I, value them as a person. Same with delegates. A lot of times, when you go into an MUN, you have this ideal plan in your head, like, okay, I want to implement these policies, and this is my IR, and this is this. But a lot of times, I mean, every time, that is not how it plays out. There'll always be times where something contradictory comes up, and instead of trying to fight delegates like, nahi, mera hi hoga, like this is only what I want will happen, you should instead focus on, this is what I want, this is what you want. Why don't we create a solution that gets us both what we want? So making compromise and flexibility is extremely important, because one, you'll get more detailed and more interesting solutions to your DR that way. You'll get more interesting like operative clauses, because now your operative clauses also not only include information about India, but they also include information about China and how Philippines will play into it and all of that, instead of just not having that conversation and growl and be like, fine, do whatever you want. When you try to have like actual conversation that makes your clauses more unique, that makes your DR more unique, that makes you as a delegate more unique, you should not try to make like, okay, you know what, obviously this is not you like losing out on your core values or what you think is really important, but allowing some compromise in some places, and really focusing on solutions that address every party and make sure that everyone who's writing your DR and sponsoring your DR is happy. And that's why when you're making all those operative clauses, make sure they're detailed, make sure they're long and large, and that's how the only way you can get that is if you have discussions and if you have compromise and flexibility. If you could go to the next slide then. Yeah, responses to points. So for example, we have a really good session on rebuttals. This was a debating session and it's on our YouTube channel. Idhant, if you could drop the YouTube channel link, because that really explains how you do rebuttals, and we've said that in the past as well. But in MUNs it's a little different, because if you have so what I like to do, I think I said this in the last session as well, is what I like to do is I keep a list of key statistics I want to use. So for example, I'm Israel and a lot of people are going to ask me, but that land was never your place to begin with, or something like that. Some controversial thing. I will already, and I can anticipate like, oh, if I'm going to bring up electric vehicles, a lot of people are going to be like, oh, but coal is also, fossil fuel. And how are you going to, how are electric vehicles good then? That's like an anticipated question. So I'm already going to keep a sheet of statistics on hand. So as soon as that question comes to me, I have a statistic and I can reply. Obviously you can't predict what people will say, and obviously sometimes you have to just give logic based rebuttals or rebuttals from historical events or whatever. But a really good way to give good responses is keep a sheet, keep links of like, or keep statistics that are really handy and really create an impact, like 1.4 million refugees are there in Lebanon. That creates an impact. Every time someone like refutes like, oh, like there's not that big of a crisis in Lebanon, you can use that statistic. You can show that no, there is a crisis and it's truly a detrimental thing. And obviously when you're replying, please use diplomatic language. Don't attack them personally or show hostility. This will look really, really bad to the chair, because then they'll know that you're not a smart delegate, you're an emotional delegate, and that's not what you want. Obviously use, language and aggression to a certain extent. Don't be a robot. But this is a formal conference at the end of the day, and a lot of times people start screaming and shouting, even in a moderated caucus, and that's not really how you should go with it. And lastly, really focus on what points are going to be worth your time. If there's a point that you think is genuinely uninteresting or genuinely redundant, or is, because a lot of times people ask stupid questions, right? People ask questions that are not relevant to the topic at all. I'm here talking about education, they somehow bring up nuclear warfare. You don't need to spend time answering those questions. And the EB will also recognize, like, what was that question that was asked? How is that related to the topic at all? What you do need to know is that when there's a relevant question, maybe there's a question that a lot of other delegates are thinking, or a lot of people are like, oh, that's such a cool question to ask, then you need to really respond in a good way. And if you don't want to know how to get a really good rebuttal, again, go to our YouTube channel. We have a whole video on rebuttals because it's used in debating as well. But response to points is a really, really key thing. We can move on to the next slide. Yeah. All right. So these are just a few things to keep in mind to be effective in caucuses. These are just a few tips we have for you. Obviously, if you don't feel like you want to do some of this, or it slips off out of your mind, that doesn't mean you won't win best del. But these tips and tricks are common themes between on best delegates. So just, yeah, let's get through it. Next slide. Yeah. Okay, firstly, effective communication. We've all talked about this. But mainly I want to highlight the last one, which is being a good speaker doesn't stop in your unmods. That confidence that you're using in your moderated caucuses when you're making a structured speech and you're pulling out all these statistics, you need to use that same communication in your unmoderated caucuses. Being a good speaker does not stop when the chair isn't looking. Even if the chair is on their phone scrolling, you never know when they're listening to you. Then you never know when they're looking behind at you or spying on you. A lot of times, I personally know chairs who will act like they're uninterested in you, but like are secretly listening because they want to see how you actually react in that situation. Because they want to know your actual personality and how you deal with diplomacy. So be sure that when you're, yes, let me take that into account. No, we should use this statistic, and like making really good points and arguments. That does not stop in your like moderated caucus. You need to keep acting like a good delegate, acting like you know everything about your country, acting like a very strong delegate even in your unmoderated caucuses, because if you don't, you'll seem lazy and redundant. So then we'll go to the next slide. Sorry, there's a bit of lag on our end. Yeah, all right. Then there's a problem solving approach. Again, we've talked about this a lot. You don't need to argue. You don't need to act all assertive all the time. If there's a problem within your own block, like for example, China and Russia are actually schoolmates in middle school. They know each other personally, and now they're bringing up beef that was 2 years old. You don't know anything about how these two people like had this beef over this one person, or there's suddenly drama that's going on in the committee. Instead of trying to, instigate them all, think of a problem solving approach. Like, okay, we're going to divide our block into two teams. China, you be in that block. Russia, you be in that block. We're going to discuss things that way so that you guys don't keep on fighting with each other. Think of a problem. Think of a problem, create a solution to that, because a lot of times you're not only creating solutions for your country, you're also creating solutions to keep people in your block from fighting or from gaining power over each other. So you really need to make sure that that's also again what shows leadership, because what is being best delegate all about? Mean best delegate is the person who has the most control over their block and is effectively getting that communication. So if you can show that you are the one giving the most solutions when problems come up, you're the one handling the situation when things go way too rogue, then that shows that you're a leader, because that's what a leader does, save people when things go wrong. So that's really what you need to do when you're thinking of a problem solving approach. We can go to next slide. Yeah. Okay, let your personality come through. Again, we're talking about all of the solutions, but maybe you're the delegate who speaks in a really low voice and is very, very serious when talking about the moderated caucuses. Or maybe you're the delegate who keeps on talking about your future plans and how you're going to make the world a better place. Or maybe you're the delegate that uses all this logic and fact and statistics in a very cool and intricate way. all their different shapes and sizes of best delegates. A best delegate isn't like one template. There are certain characteristics to a best delegate, but at the end of the day, if you're a more logical person, if you like using statistics more, if you like talking about those little integrities and you want to really shine in that, then shine in that. But if you're a person who likes, making small talk and using metaphors and similes and, building a picture, let that come in your personality. But whatever your personality is, you need to be proactive in that personality and you need to build it well, okay? And also make sure that strategically your personality makes sense. You're not going to be all like, soft and caring around your enemy. You're going to be a bit hostile and a bit firm with them, obviously not disrespectful, but make sure that your personality like makes sense in the larger context of the MUN as well. Because you're for like I don't know why a lot of people think this, but your EBs are your EBs for a reason. They know about geopolitics, they know about international relations better than you do. So if you act like you're better than them, and if you think that they don't know that you're talking with like your enemy, or that if you're talking with people that or if you're making things that don't make political sense, they're going to know. They're smart enough for that. There are a lot of times that college students, or people even in their 30s and 40s, who it's their actual profession. A lot of times, I've been had chairs who are actual Yale students studying global policy. I think they know more about like international relations than I do. So I have to make sure I do my thorough research and make sure my personality comes through. Because if they see me acting up or acting against my foreign policy, they are going to know. So make sure that stay aware at all times, because your EBs are smart people. Don't underestimate them. Um, we can go to the next slide. Um, yeah, this is a really, really key tip. I don't know why a lot of people are really afraid from reading from a page. And I think you're looking up and you're looking down, and you're looking up and you're looking down, and you look like a really scared rat and you're stuttering in the middle. For a lot of times in MUNs, I think a lot of chairs, unless they specifically advise you not to do so, or you notice that your chair is, kind of acting off when you read off your speech. This usually doesn't happen. In most MUNs, you can print out your whole speech. I mean, if you can't, but I mean, you can write down your whole speech, read it off like this. But if you still use good body language, if you're still directing questions, if you're engaging enough, that's fine. Again, as it says, model United Nations speech is about conveying the message, not memorization. You won't get extra points just because you memorize your speech. So don't be afraid to read from the page, to refer to your points, to pick up a page, refer to some extra points when you have a ROP, all of that. So just don't be afraid to do that. And this is specifically for MUNs. If you're doing public speaking, I would recommend you not to do this. If you're giving a presentation, I would recommend you not to do this. But in MUNs, this works out really well. Don't do this in your mod caucuses. Please just talk like normal people in your mod caucus. Next slide. Like unmod caucuses. Yeah. All right. Then focus on the speech, not the audience. All right. A lot of times I have been the evil delegate. And let me explain what that means. So a lot of times I'm a delegate in my personally, and you don't have to be this, I'm a delegate that always instigates things. Like if I find that there's some factual inaccuracy in what someone's saying, if I find that someone is not aligned with them, I'll keep sending them chits, I'll keep asking them questions, I'll keep building enemies per se, because I want to engage in the MUN. Because of this, I get a lot of people who, I mean, strategically don't like me very much and are kind of becoming hostile to me. So a lot of times when I was giving speeches, a lot of times people would be like, whoa, like, oh, she's going to speak right now. Or a lot of times people would like, I think I've had experience where someone tried to throw a paper plane at the back of my head, which I know seems a bit lost. Or like I've had a lot of times because I was in the MUN and my partner was next to me and she was literally falling asleep while I was saying my speech. And that sometimes bothers me because I'm like, I'm prepared so hard for this speech and you're falling asleep next to me. But it's really not about the audience, it's about your EB. As long as your EB is listening to you, as long as your EB is taking notes about you, that's really what matters. A lot of times delegates are not interested, a bit hostile, a bit so to say, like uninterested in the MUN that they chose to participate in. So don't really focus on that. Whenever you're saying a moderate caucus, it's best to just ask rhetorical questions. If you want to engage with the audience, don't really actually ask them questions, and just mainly focus on getting your point across to the EB, because at the end of the day, the EB is the one that gives you marks, not the delegates. You should build good relationships with them, but you can't get good relationships with every single delegate. That's not how MUNs work. You're going to have a few people that you're on a bad terms with. So we can go to the next slide. Um Gauri, we can go to the next slide. Or yeah. Yeah. All right. Plan for time constraints. Okay. Okay, I would just like a raise of hands just to make sure you guys are still here. Who all of you prefer to like write down your whole speech and read it out loud? Like word to word, you would like to write down your whole speech. Just raise your hand or put it in chat. If you like to do that, because I like to do that. Like I'll be guilty. Like I like to just write a whole speech, just read it out loud. Yeah, Pooja, great. We're on the same boat here. Uh, um, that's great. Thank you for like listening to that. I guess not the rest, but I think me and Pooja are a bit of a fault here because oh yeah, thank you for that as well. So we like to write on our speech the whole thing, right? Because it's so easy. I can just read it all and it's all good. But a lot of times our written speech doesn't really work out that well. So what the main thing is you write in bullet points when you're writing your speech because again you're not allowed to pre-make speeches. Just write down your main points. What I would like to do is I would like example. I have 5 main things I want to say, but I would put a star next to the thing I want to really say, and I would say that first so that I can cover that first. Like I would like to put a star or like to highlight it with my pink highlighter or something like that, just so I know that oh I need to say this first. This is just for in general. But let's say you don't have time to complete your last point. You can just say simply, and I have more things I want to say. So please let's discuss this more in my unmount caucus. You can meet me and we could talk more about the refugee crisis. You can just end your speech in that way where you can indicate that you have more things to say but don't have enough time, or that you're really passionate on this issue. Like, and to conclude, I have so many more things about that I want to say on this issue. I could keep talking for days, but I'm going to end here from the lack of time constraint. But if you want to discuss more, know that discussion is never over, or something like that. Just to kind of give that you won't have more things you want to talk about. So just plan for time constraints. Don't be afraid if you don't have anything, you've missed out some point. Again, you're the only one who knows what your speech was supposed to be. So everyone, like no one else knows you missed out on that point. Only you know that you missed out on that point. Even the EB doesn't know you missed out on one singular point. So just forget about it. Move on. It doesn't really, if you miss a point, if you stutter, if you go over time by 2 seconds, it doesn't matter. It's one speech out of tens that you're going to try to give, out of hours you're going to spend in your moderated and unmoderated caucuses. It's one speech. You need to keep grinding away at an MUN, and that's what makes MUNs fun but so tiring, because at the end of the day you've been speaking non-stop for 8 hours and then you get home and you collapse on your bed. So that's what you really need to make sure that you get to that collapsing stage. I want you guys to be trained in such a way that you're always trying to give a speech, that you're always trying to do something. That's what really MUNs are about.
If I could add something in, that point is so valid. Like I did an MU, my schedule went like I came back from my MUN, I crashed for 4 hours. I would get up, continue my research, sleep again, and go back to my conference. And I did not feel like that was bad. I did not think that was not normal. That was what I loved, and that was what I did. But something I also wanted to add was that a lot of delegates get off paced or get startled when the EB starts banging their gavel, or when delegates are not looking at them and all of that. But as Avira has said so clearly, please plan your speech instead of trying to read off of a whole thing, because that even a small distraction will set you off course. But if you just have the points you really want to talk about, as I said, highlight your main arguments, know your main arguments, you're set to go.
Yeah, exactly. Like if a lot of times, if you have a 2 minute speech, the EB will bang once that you have 1 minute left and be like, oh, okay. So as I was saying, and then you've just lost 5 seconds of your time. So just make sure that it's in bullet points. Don't get dissuaded. Don't focus on anything else. Be in your Zen mode. But make sure that if you get dissuaded, because a lot of us do, a lot of us stutter. I stutter. Everyone stutters. Everyone messes up sometimes. Your EB also sometimes messes up when the next is the mod, sorry, unmod caucus, the delegate of Syria, you can go ahead. EVs also mess up all the time, but no one's gonna penalize them for that. So just yeah, it's fine, totally fine. But again, I was strongly don't go with the notion of writing out a whole speech. As much as I love them, I can't do them. So we'll go to the next slide. Gauri, we can go to the next slide. Yeah, okay. Start strong and close stronger. Oh my God, this is my favorite part. I just want to I've used this example so many times, but I think it was a great example to drive the point home. But I think I was talking about sustainability, and then I brought up something about Taylor Swift having her own private jet, and that's why, why should all these rich countries have to focus when their citizens are riding private jets, where my poor small island nation barely has enough money to eat food? And then I brought in some points, but now the mention of Taylor Swift has completely perked people's interest. Like, oh my god, I want to know what she's talking about. Why is she mentioning Taylor Swift? What is going on? And then I would also conclude with some strong note, like, this is the end of the speech, but this is not the end of the war, or something like that. And then we would be like, whoa, what is she talking about? Because a lot of times, think of it like Instagram reels. A lot of times when you watch Instagram reels, you only focus on the starting portion and the ending portion, and you kind of forget what happened all in the middle. And that's with human tendencies. We as a generation are having smaller and smaller attention spans and are less likely to pay attention on the main crux of the stuff. So if you can give a really good summarizing point, a really good starting point or analogy, and you can really tie that all together, that's not only going to show that you're a really good speaker to the EB, but also the other people around you be like, whoa, she also doesn't like Taylor Swift. I also don't like Taylor Swift. I want to talk to her in my unmarked caucus. Or like, oh, that was a really good speech when she talking about the war, and this aligns with my values. I want to talk to her in my unmarked caucus. If you're a forgettable delegate, you're not going to win Bestel. The whole point is for you to be unforgettable, for you to perk people's interest. If you blend into the background and then if you become like invisible to your fellow delegates and to the chair, then there's no point of you working in an MUN. So we can go to the next slide. Just before that, I just need water really quick. I'm just gonna get it in 1 second. Sorry.
Let's just give her a second, guys.
See, even I'm not perfect. I need a I need water in the middle of my speech. All right. Okay. Loss. Loss is terrible. But I have faced loss a lot. I've had committees where I've had 5 different blocks made with 5 different completely random countries, and my last block being the one that won. So a lot of times, again, just I need to control a bit of my control freak tendencies, because as soon as things don't start going my way, I'm like getting a bit panicked. But the main thing is, loss happens. Your first block isn't going to be your last block most of your time. Your first version of your DR isn't going to be the last version of your DR. Your first original plan isn't going to be your last plan. And you need to let it go. A lot of times, for example, I was really trying to be a signatory of one DR, and then it didn't happen. And I let that go, but I still won Bestel. Because I still focused on other things and I never gave up. So this is not about giving up, but just realize that a lot of times whatever you work towards in your MUN, that's not what's going to be there in the end. A lot of times the policy that you really, really worked hard on and you like went through 5 different Wikipedia pages to search is not going to be put in your DR, and that's okay. If you show your opponents that there's a weakness and that you really care about this policy, they're going to exploit that weakness, and then you're going to make you a weaker delegate. So never ever show your weakness to your enemies, and your especially your enemies, because then they're going to like attack that. But not even to your friends in your like delegate, like in your committee, because then you're going to seem weaker than they actually are. Always put on a strong front, and never ever let a loss affect you in an MUN. If you didn't get a really good remark from a judge, if you got penalized for something, if you started off your speech really shaky, if your whole block fell apart and that whole block on that whole group of countries hate you, it's fine. It happens in an MUN. It happens in real life with real countries and real people. So, and we have to let that go and move on and continue further as a country. So yeah, just know that in mind and keep reminding yourself that if things go wrong, it's all going to be okay, and just continue building on all those points that we've been telling you repeatedly again and again. Next. Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for this MUN session. It was a smaller group, but I really appreciated you guys still being here nonetheless, because we always give like very short notices. But just for a good rule of thumb, we have these every Saturday. So if you have any people who have nothing better to do on a Saturday, they can always hop in. Maybe they'll learn a few things about how to make friends with strangers, how to just communicate better as a person, because MUNs are truly a life skill. It's not just a one-time use and then you throw it away. I think MUNs can still be helpful even in college, because that's how, people work. If you ever want to study IR, MUNs are a really good way to do that. And yeah, thank you all so much for coming. Um,
Yeah,
I'm
thank you guys. We loved having you here. Thank you for patiently listening to us. From now that we've covered most of the delegates' point of view and the EB's point of view and the committee's individual aspects, we'll be working on how to get you guys to understand the flow of MUNs as well. So do come into our Discord channel. You can ask whatever questions you have over there. You can pitch in with whatever you want to talk about over there. And it's a safe community. It's going to be a very inclusive community. And there's a lot to look forward to in accord to MUNs and even debates. So yeah, thank you for all for coming right now and staying for so long as well. Anything else to discuss, Amira? Or shall we end the session?
Yeah, I just want to see if anyone has any questions, if they would like to ask, if you guys also, just want to let you guys know, if you ever have an MUN that you want to prepare for, and you don't really know how to start, I'm there on Discord. I'm Avira, like Avira, like as it's spelled on my Zoom name. You can at me there, or you can personally DM me, and I'll like I'm not that active on Discord, but I'll still try to give you advice on your personal session. Like, hey Avira, I'm like this country in this random MUN. This is my first time, I've never been there. How do I get started? Do you want to hop on a call with me, and then we can discuss strategies on my MUN? I'd love to do that with you. I'd love to train you and make you a better delegate, because first of all, I have a lot of free time on my hands and I love helping people, and also it just builds support and in my community, and that's what I'm really here for, because I wish someone did that with me when I was doing my first few MUNs. So that's really it. You can add me, you can message me if you like, oh, I had that question, why don't I ask that in the meeting? Totally free,
There's
totally.
actually a lot of delegates who are doing that already in the chat. Couple days ago, I saw someone named Ahuja or something, and they asked a lot about their background guide, how to analyze it, and our team helped them, and we sat down, and she DM'd me as well. So guys, please feel free to just text us, to come onto the Discord, hop on there whenever you have a question or need guidance. We're happy to help.
And just a quick check in. Any questions from your guys' side? Or is it all good? All right. This is all good. I mean, this is a pretty basic session. This is just talking about how you go about like body language and all of that. We talk about more of the technical stuff. Again, also just one more thing. If you don't like certain things about a session, if you think these guys are talking way too slow, or they're talking way too fast, or the graphics don't make sense to me, we really want you to tell us that, because we really, really want that feedback. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if we're speaking in a good way to ourselves. It matters if this information seeps through your head. So if you have any feedback, please put it in. Please tell us, go at organizing, hey, here's what I had the complaints with the session. um Please let us know, and we'll make sure to take that into account, because we're always trying to better ourselves as a community as well. This is also our first time kind of doing this with a really new organization. So that's really what we want from you guys as well in return, providing you these resources. So I think we're good to end the meeting. Again, I think I've seen Pujna a lot, and also a lot of other people here a lot in the past sessions. And I also saw like people taking notes, and I'm really happy. So thank you so much for letting us provide you with that. And we're going to end with the session. Thank you.
Thank you.